My name is Trey, and today we are going to look through r/PettyRevenge, the subreddit for those smaller victories over the people who've wronged them. I apologise if my voice is a little off today. I'm a little bit unwell. This first post is by Magnus_40. Apparently booking a seat on a train is not a real booking if someone else decides to sit there. I was travelling from Edinburgh to London by train and had a booked window seat with a table. I got on the train to find 4 guys sitting at the table. The one in my seat that was clearly marked as booked refused to move as he was with his friends and the train was packed. The ticket collector passed and I asked him to help. He asked the guy to move, but he refused, and somehow that was that. So what now, I asked. You can find another seat, but I have no power to move him. Only the police will move in, and they will not turn up just to move someone out of a seat. There were no seats free in the carriage, and probably not many free on the train, so standing to London was a possibility. I'm going to take a seat in first class. Better surroundings, power sockets, and free tea and coffee. You can't sit there, you don't have a booking. Well, you could call the police to move me, but apparently they won't turn up to move someone out of a seat. I had a lovely trip with power for my laptop and a wide comfy seat. I'm pretty sure you can reclaim part of the cost for that ticket because you didn't actually get your seat. This next post is by Top of the Morning. Neighbour took my parking spot after I shoveled. I poured water in his windshield. It was a cold winter day. 8 inches of snow had fallen the night before, and the wind chill made it feel as if it were in the negatives Fahrenheit. I drive an all-wheel SUV, so I have no issues getting out. My wife, on the other hand, drives a Prius, which slides the smallest amount of moisture on the road. My car was down at the time, so we had to take my wife's car. I spent 45 minutes in the freezing cold shoveling that car out, so we could get to the store. We were gone for an hour, and when we came back, our neighbour had taken the spot I'd shoveled. Our apartment complex doesn't have assigned parking, but in the winter, it's understood that if you shovel a spot, it's yours. So when I saw his car in the spot I had just shoveled, I was pretty peed. I went inside and filled 2-gallon jugs of water, went back out and poured them on his windshield, rinse and repeat. I must have poured about 10 gallons of water on his car. Being how cold it was already freezing by the time I poured the last gallon on. It sat like that overnight. The next morning, I got to watch as he helplessly tried to scrape all of those layers of ice off his windshield. Don't take my goddamn parking spot. That's so funny. I think that's fair enough though, it's your spot. If you've taken the time to shovel your spot, and then someone takes it, that's just mean. Why even do that? That's not cool. This next post is by The Toilet Destroyer. Entitled Parker parked in my driveway, so I blocked them in and got drunk all weekend. Friday night, I came home from work to find someone on our block and was having a large party, and someone decided they were entitled to park in my driveway. Keep in mind, my driveway is a single car width, lined with a retaining wall on both sides and a garage at the end. Essentially impossible for a tow truck to come pull them out without property damage. Seeing this and the lack of street parking, I took this as a cue to park right behind them in my driveway. Now a few hours go by, and their entitled Parker is now knocking at my door demanding I move my car so she can leave. Seeing as they were demanding, I informed them that I had been drinking and would not move my car. The entitled Parker then decides to call the police to get them to force me to move. When the police knocked on my door, I was sure to grab a beer from the fridge before I answered and talked to the officer. I had informed them that after I got home and I was unwinding and had been drinking, I was in no shape to drive. At this point, their hands were tied because they couldn't tow their car out, I'm in no shape to drive, and I'm illegally parked in my driveway. I ended up telling the entitled Parker that since it is a long weekend, I would be on a weekend-long bender, and they could come move my car after I go to work on Tuesday. That's crazy, the entitlement to park in someone else's driveway without permission? That reminds me of the truck story that I read a few days ago. This next post is by King of Z Dumb. You want to try take 9 inches off our property? We'll take 20 feet of yours. We have lived in our house for about 8 years in a rural neighborhood in Arizona. about a year ago, this dude from California bought the lot next to us and threw a fit about the stuff we had on the property line. We had a single fence pole, vaguely where the property line was. We hadn't had any sort of land survey done. It was supposed to just be a temporary marker that became a permanent marker. Dude was absolutely livid that we had vehicles parked on his property. The very tip of one of our cars was touching the established boundary. He threatened to have our vehicle towed, so we simply had an actual land survey done, and it turned out the property line was a good 20 feet into his property. Homeboy should have just let sleeping dogs lie and not been an a-hole about a few inches. Edit. I had some journalists reach out to me and ask for more comments, so here are the updates you asked for. Feel free to ask more questions for more clarifications or ask again if I missed yours. Number 1. Zip code redacted for GPS reference. It's a small rural neighborhood in the mountains of Arizona. All the houses are 3 to 5 acre horse properties. The roads are all dirt and unmaintained. It used to be a very understandable place to live, but in the last few years it has been developed and property values have been going up, quadrupling since we moved here in 2016. This has attracted a crowd of people who care what yards look like, who simply weren't here when this was cheap. The Neighbour is one of these new people. We moved here specifically because the neighborhood had a bunch of messy yards already, and we also wanted to have lenient neighbors. We lived in harmony with our neighbors' junky yards for years. Number 2. The neighbor introduced himself by calling the county on a bunch of us anonymously. We knew he had called on us because he was bragging about calling the county on several other of the neighbors for their messy yard. So whether he intentionally included us in the report or not, he brought the inspectors to the neighborhood. He came on our property by at least 40 feet before there was a fence to closely examine our piles of scrap metal. We caught this on camera and confronted him in text. It turns out he was very angry that he had purchased land next to a pseudo scrapyard. We had several cars in various stages of disassembly and piles of materials. Keep in mind, this is the country. This is normal out here. We're on 5 acre lots. Another detail that I missed in my original post, he isn't even living on this lot. He bought a lot with a very small cabin 3 houses down, along with the lot next to us with the intention of turning it into an income property. After we confronted him in text, he confronted us in person about our front yard, leaning against our no trespassing sign and screaming obscenities at us. Number 3. We haven't seen him. Since we saw him on our security camera observing the survey markers, dismayed, it's entirely possible that we entirely chased him out of the neighborhood. The people on the other side of his lot, who have an equally trashed yard from their small-scale pig farming operation that he should have known existed before buying the land, had such a bad experience with him that she had a restraining order on him. They are also having a potentially equally funny dispute about a shed that she built fully on his lot over 15 years ago, which means they're going to have to go to court over who now owns it, and our adverse possession laws are certainly on her side. Currently, we are building an ugly fence on the newly surveyed property line. Here's what the top comment has to say. I did something similar. New neighbor came in and built a big A fence down the property border, but he built it a good bit onto my side, and then started trying to get my trees removed. Put a stop to that, got his fence ripped down, then built my own fence a good way into his lawn, right down the actual property line. The previous owners were good friends of mine, and they'd come over and asked if they could move in on the wooded DMZ between our houses, and I was fine with that. I'd have been fine leaving it too, but not after all that bull-s. Same guy went around to my neighbor on the other side, we share a lawn over there, and started bad-mouthing me and telling him he needed to get an assessor, and that guy pointed out that his house was built right against the property line on the side between him and me, and the whole yard on that side is mine. Some people just don't understand how to be neighbors. This next post is by ER Jar. Total Wine would not sell me the specific wine I drove 60 miles to that location for, because they claim I was with someone else who left, and they need a CID for that person. I was alone, so I made a mobile order of $10,000 and never picked it up. I got mad all over again writing this because of the sheer amount of disrespect from Total Wine management. I have a receipt for this order too. There's a specific wine I used to pair with food. The closest Total Wine that I had was a 60-mile drive, and it was storming out, and I wanted it for the holidays because most likely it was going to be cooped up inside. So I drive over. This used to be my typical Total Wine until I moved 2 counties away. Anyways, I go in and pick up the wine, and get some other stuff for holiday parties. Was in there maybe an hour, and it comes time to check out, and the cashier asks me for my ID. So I give it to her, and then she tells me she needs to see the ID of the other person I was with. So now I'm confused and say I'm alone? She says, well, I have to go get my manager. Okay, fine. So he comes out to tell me that she told him I was with someone, and they need to come back and bring their ID or they won't sell it to me. I told him I wasn't with anyone. He asks to see my ID, looks at it, and says, well, unfortunately you look young. At this point I'm like, are you serious? And he's like, you can come back tomorrow alone. I find it extremely disrespectful to tell someone they look young while you're holding their ID in your hand, and not to mention I've been shopping at that exact location for about 4 years and have never had a problem. So I told him about how I drove there, have been shopping there for years, and that I even have a second form of ID. He was just kind of giggling and saying no. This is so disrespectful. So I left very angry, and it was late around 9 PM, and then I had about an hour and a half drive back home in the rainstorm. So I was home, peed about it all night, and the next day I went into the one close to my house to get the other stuff I was getting. Unfortunately, that one was out of the wine, that's why I originally didn't go there. They were pleasant as usual, actually beyond nice, and didn't even ID me, which just goes to show the other location was on some kind of power trip or something. Then I got an email for them to review my experience, which they send every time I go there, and I never do it, but I decided to select the location I had the bad experience at and give feedback on it. So I wrote exactly what happened, and the next day I got a call from the store manager. Turns out the guy that night was an assistant manager or something. However, he was much more pleasant than the woman that called me. She was extremely rude and condescending, and told me that she reviewed the cameras and that someone walked in with me at the same time and that made us a party. I told her I didn't know them. She said it didn't matter, so apparently people can't walk into Total Wine at the same time as you? Then she said that the employees were watching me and that the person left 30 minutes before I went to check out and they saw it. Okay, so? Also, if that is the case, and that is your policy, why didn't you say something when you saw the person leave? And we could have cleared up the whole situation right then and there, instead of continuing to allow me to shop for another 30 minutes and waste my time to know that when I came back to check out you were going to deny it. So I told her that even if that was the case, someone can't leave a store, and she said no, to complete the transaction they would have to drive back with their ID. This made me extremely angry, because even if that is the case and that is the policy, at least you can offer an apology for the inconvenience or something like that, not just call me to argue and stir the pot. I was already kind of over it because it had been like 2 days, but just her whole attitude and nastiness about the whole thing was really insult to injury, kicking someone while they're down. So I decided to look up their policy, and their policy clearly states that this only applies to parties at checkout. So the rule is who was with you at checkout, which makes more sense, or at least that is more understandable. Another policy I read which was interesting was that any online order not picked up within a week, they will issue a full refund to your original payment method. So my friends and I were sitting home drinking the stuff I'd gotten at the other location later that day, and telling them what happened, and they were all shocked. I know people who work retail specifically during COVID, and I know what an inconvenience it is to set up big curbside pickup orders because they take a lot of space on the order shelf. So, drunk and mad, I decided to enforce their own policy on them and make a $10,000 order for the soonest possible pickup time, which they promise orders ready in 3 hours. So I made sure to order the cheapest, heaviest bottles I could think of, so it can take up the most amount of space in their curbside and made sure to only order like 1 or 2 of each, so they couldn't just give me a case, they had to get individual ones. And I ordered a whole supply of Tito's since it's popular and it's the holidays and I know people are going to be looking for it. And this Total Wine has its curbside order section in the front behind a counter where you can see it. And I know when customers saw it, they would ask for it, and then they would probably have to explain how someone ordered all 238 bottles and they're back there on reserve. Then they'd probably get grouchy and ask for a manager. But the manager would be busy because I also made sure to order a lot of bottles behind glass, so they would have to run around with their keys scrambling to get this order ready. I worked retail and I know how much stuff like this throws off a schedule and annoys the managers. So I loaded up a cart and stopped when I got bored and placed the order. I got the email confirmation, which specified that you have to wait for the pickup confirmation email, and that sometimes pickup times aren't guaranteed, so I thought for sure they were either going to cancel the order or call me or something. And something interesting that is sent with the email is a pickup policy that states specifically the recipient of the order needs to be 21, so you can have other people in your car not 21? Well, 5 hours later, I got the pickup email. It took them longer, but I was still surprised. Then later, I got a pickup reminder email. Then 3 days later, a second reminder. Then 7 days, I got my final notice email. And then day 10, I got a phone call. It was the manager acting like a completely different person, this time, asking when I was coming for the order. At this point, I think she knew I was effing with them because it had been 10 days and she knew my name from the previous feedback thing. Because when she called, she asked for me by name and my name was on the order. So I told her, yeah, I went to pick it up and was told I looked too young. So I just went to the other Total Wine and picked up the same stuff there. So then she was mad and said, are you seriously not coming to pick this stuff up? LOL, restock! I just said, nah. She hung up, LMFAO. When your higher up asked you why your store had to refund someone $10,000, explain to them what you did, LMFAO. They were supposed to automatically cancel the order at the 7-day mark, but didn't. She called me at day 10. So I called the customer service line to cancel it, and she told me some stores wait till the end of the month to do it. I'm assuming the manager was trying to hold out on refunding to end the year on a better number. Retail does that. I made them cancel it right then. LMFAO. This next post is by Throwaway 72615-18993. Dyed my hair blue so boss would stop blaming me for hair in customers' food. I used to work for a sandwich shop. All the other employees there were Indian women with very long black hair. Mine was sort of similar, I suppose, medium length and brown. But every time a customer would complain about a long black hair in the food, my boss would immediately blame me without any hesitation or investigation, despite the fact that I was the only person who wore my hair up and netted. So one day I dyed my hair blue with the sole purpose of not being blamed for black hair in the food. You guessed it, it happened. And how huffy and annoyed my boss got when I said it couldn't be my hair because mine is blue was beyond amusing. It would be really funny if you have to dye your own hair for like safety reasons, so you stop getting blamed. That's ridiculous though. And that's gonna be it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stories in r/PettyRevenge. Let me know what you'd like to listen to in the comments section below. Again, sorry for my voice, I'm a little bit unwell today. My name is Trey, this was Reload Reacts, and I will see you in the next video.